that are to be addressed today in this presentation are basically how is the civil engineering profession in Spain is structured. Then I will basically talk about Colegio, which is basically the civil engineering chamber, which also makes jointly the activities of an association and also the regulation and enforcement of the profession. Afterwards, in order to make a broader issue, in order to give further insight, not only for professionals in Texas, but also for Spanish professionals, not to make them so boring, I will be talking about professional recognition according to the EU directives and the difference regarding with diploma recognition with non-EU members. And finally, I will make a topic on professional liability, which is something which is quite different from the issue how it is addressed in Texas. Disgracefully, I didn't add any further issues regarding procurement, as I thought I would be very short on time. So let's go. Basically, regarding civil engineering, I don't know if you're aware that one of the issues here is that the only definition that is worldwide accepted regarding civil engineer was not made by civil engineers themselves, and it was presented in the International Labour Organization. I mean, this definition, I won't go over it. I mean, it's quite easy on that, but that brings you an issue that will be presented later here. And this is the fact that the civil engineering profession in Spain is too tired. On the issues that there's two elements. The first one is well, some people will call it the P or the chartered professional or the maximum capability professionals, which are regarding the Ingeniero de Caminos, Canales y Puertos, which does have the equivalence to the 2142 civil engineer and ILO equivalent regulated profession. And in this case, the before mentioned definition is based for this profession. Afterwards, we also have an equivalent would be the civil engineering technician, which is regarded on the profession of the Ingeniero Técnico de Obras Públicas, which are two regulated professions. I mean, it's not an incremental degree, rather than two different professions which have two different areas of expertise and liability. So we will follow on that regarding the fact of one of the issues that already presented Lance regarding the requirements. Here is much more easy on the grounds that the academic requirements for ICCP licensing, which is in the end the acronym for Ingeniero de Caminos, Canales y Puertos, have been basically two different cases regarding the evolution on the Bologna process of higher education harmonization in the EU. In this case, the first of all, and the one that's most historical, is the fact of accredited by Spanish Ministry of Education, by ANECA, which is the accreditation agency for Spain, for those courses which are entitling for the regulated profession. So there are some requirements addressed which are accredited by that Spanish agency. The length of such integrated master's degree will be 5 to 6 years, but now with the new Bologna process, the degrees that have been addressed is an engineering bachelor for 4 years, and accredited ICCP master degree for 2 years. Adding up the other information regarding the other civil engineering profession regarding Ingenieros Técnicos de Obras Públicas or the engineering technician is an accredited bachelor civil engineering of 3 or 4 years. That definition taken regarding what is the structure and how it's accessed, I will bring now further information of what is Colegio. I mean, Colegio is a law entitled Civil Engineering Chamber, which is linked by the Ministry of Public Works, and it aims also the facts that already have been presented by Lance. The regulation, in that case, the representation of the profession against other stakeholders, and the defense of professional interests, not only the fact of enforcement and facts for discipline and licensing. So basically the timeline, I'm not going to try to bore you on the issues. It all begins at the turns of the 19th century, when our founder created not only the civil engineering faculty itself, but also the fact of the General Inspectorate for Roads and Channels, which was basically created. One of, in order to give you some hints on history hints, this Agustín de Betancourt, our founder, also was founder of the first civil engineering faculty in Russia, on the grounds that he finally ended up being plenipotentiary minister to the Tsar, after he was he exiled as he was collaborator to the French occupation regime during the Spanish Civil War, the Independence War in Spain. So follow up in order to bring some photos regarding our former presidents. I mean, it was created in 1953 by a former very important businessman in Spain, and now is currently chaired by Juan Santamera Sanchez, who was former dean of the Civil Engineering Faculty in Madrid. Basically, which are the access requirements for Colegio? I mean, all Ingenieros de Caminos, Canales y Puertos or professional recognized civil engineers from other countries may become licensed engineers. There's no two-tier, so the fact is there's no need basically to have a further a CPD or continual professional development requires for the revalidation of the license, but that is about to be changed regarding EU regulations, and also the fact that students or graduates may become student members. So regarding the membership, which is something which seems that we are quite high on that. I mean, if we bring now those which are finally registered are over 25,000, and basically we are now holding approximately 22,000 in Spain, and the declared people who are working abroad is over 2,500 in over 95 countries. Disgracefully, these statistics are not the fine we would like and the fine-tune we would like, and it's surely suspected that we will have over even more than 3,300 professionals abroad. Well, basically this is a geographical distribution located around Spain. I mean, you can see that most of the professionals are located in the city of Madrid, which almost are 40%, and some other places like Catalonia or Andalusia. Well, if we talk about the Ingenieros de Caminos abroad, I mean, basically our head destination by now is United Kingdom. We've declared over 300 professionals, so it seems that we can have over 500 professionals. And the second one is the United States with something like 215. So basically we presume that will be something over 300. In fact, in order to bring you some further insights regarding Texas, I mean, Texas itself holds something like 60 professionals what we have declared. So basically it will be something near the number of people we may have in Saudi Arabia for the time being, which is something like 78. If you can see, I mean, only as a comment, the fact is in Saudi Arabia there are no women working in civil engineering abroad for Spanish companies or by Spanish professionals. Basically, this is the distribution working sector regarding the registries. I mean, this is only some information for yourself. And regarding the administrative divisions, I mean, there's a governing board which is elected within the professionals, and all these are elected officials. We don't have public members as such addressed by the government. Basically, if you want some further information regarding without the outreach publication you can find here regarding the Colegio, although it's in Spanish. Basically, in order to bring now another topic and finally structure the issue regarding the specifics for Spain, I'll bring you the professional recognition according to EU directives, which would be quite enlightening in order to be able to somehow address any further collaboration or any further mobility, not only to Spain, but to other EU countries. Okay, basically I would like to bring a basic glossary for several concepts that have somehow been reviewed. But you know, it's quite interesting to be able to pinpoint them in order to be able to express adequately which is the idea regarding professional models. One of them is the fact of a regulated profession. I think we are all quite aware of what is a regulated profession and what is the need. Normally it's regulated by law, and on those grounds it has their area of expertise, their spine, etc. Not commonly around is the fact of the protected title itself, which is a protected title in the end is a decision by a voluntary organization, which means the area of expertise, which somehow has the monitoring of a competent authority, which may be normally the government. Regarding the competent authority, and this is going to be discussed later in some other regulations, the competent authority is the element which will regulate the profession in itself. For example, in the case the competent authority for the regulation in Texas would be the TPBE, In the case of the competent authority, we'll see it later in Spain, and the registration institution would be the one that would be able to make the licensing and enforcement of the regulation in the case in which it's not only the competent authority. It would depend on the country if they're both last two joined together or the concepts are different. The professional models in Europe, there are four. Basically, one is the regulated profession, the other one is the protected title, the third one is the professional chambers, and the fourth is the non-regulated. Already, the first one I already presented, the fact of the regulated profession. The second of the protected title I already somehow expressed it basically. And there's the professional chambers. In that case, professional chambers, what they do regulate is not the civil engineering profession itself, but the craft of the services provision. I mean, for example, that would mean that the chambers are not of civil engineers, but of civil engineering consultants. That is one of the basic differences, and now we will locate them all around Europe. And last but not least, they're non-regulated. When we do refer to professional models in Europe which are non-regulated, it's not that they're not regulated as such directly on the access on the requirements for professionals, but that they're somehow addressed via the insurances or otherwise by the firms. But you must bear in mind that civil engineering profession is one must of the hyper-regulated professions in engineering, especially because it's quite related to public procurement. So let's follow on the issue. We'll go on a country classification regarding which are the areas to be addressed in the different countries. We may see that the regulated countries, or Model 1, are basically located in the South and Eastern Europe, whereas the non-regulated basically are considered on the Northern Europe. The non-regulated countries are not basically on the Northern Europe, but they are regulated rather either by protected titles, referring to academic titles, or for the fact that the countries are very little somehow, and they don't need so far requirements. I mean, the number of civil engineers which are in Holland does not require somehow, they do require registration, but they don't need somehow structural access, whereas shipbuilding, which is one of the greatest engineering issues regarding Holland, does have real registration and recognition issues. And last but not least, in order to be partially regulated on the cases of 2 and 3, especially the fact on 3 regarding professional chambers, not professional but somehow service chambers, we'll be talking about Central Europe. If we see, the fact is, let's take, you cut the scale downwards and we will be able to follow which are the difference between 1 and 4. Okay, so it should be just the other way around in the cases that the 4, the non-regulated, and that is an error in the map. The non-regulated are, for example, France, which would be the 1, so this is an error here. The fact is that the lighter is the less regulated that they two are. Okay? So basically, we're going to address finally the professional mobility framework. There are 2 applicable European directives. This is only for information, one regarding the professional services and the other regarding professional qualification recognition. Why? I mean, this last 2006-35 has already been updated in 2015, but it will not come into force until next year. So that is one of the reasons I already have presented this as the framework. These do have 2 different elements to be addressed regarding professional mobility. One of them is cross-border services, the fact of the temporal license that had been already presented by the example that was presented by Lance. But in this case, it requires an assessment for a specific task. It would mean that in the case you're requesting any type of temporal license or cross-border services to another EU country, the only need to be able to declare that you are adequately qualified in your country of origin, what is the tax area you're going to be addressed, and that you have no hinderings to be able to address that capacity. On the other hand, you also have the fact of the freedom of establishment, which is the final recognition in the end, which covers a full license and requires the professional recognition in the destination country. Whereas on the other option, that is not requested. Basically, now we're talking to the specifics coming down to Spain. So let's talk about the basic facts regarding the EU directive. Regarding the fact of the competent authority here, here is the Public Works Ministry or the Ministry of Fomento, and the registration institution for each regulated profession may be the Colegio de Ingenieros Canales y Puertos or the Colegio de Ingenieros Técnicos de Obras Públicas. We'll follow later. The fact that is one thing which is important, because basically, and that is ground for discussion in general, especially for future contacts regarding the possibilities of collaboration with the Texas Board of Professional Engineering, is the fact that there's difference, and it's something that has to be tackled, and is being tackled here in Spain and in the rest of the EU regarding what is professional and diploma recognition. Basically, this issue is brought up on the grounds that there are no further requirements for licensing in Spain, rather than the fact of the diploma recognition. Basically, because most of the profession, any degrees that have to be addressed regarding the profession were itself required on a strict and narrow issues to be able to address them before to issue those elements for a regulated profession. On those grounds, and only to bring some further information on this, I won't go any further unless requested, and I can give you further information if requested. The fact is that there are two different competent authorities for the fact of who is entitled to make each recognition. On the cases of professional recognition for the time being, and the fact of EU nationals or EU degrees addressed, the competent authority would be the Ministry of Públicos or Ministerio de Fomento. On the other grounds, sorry for the mistyping, I get it in Spanish, and the fact is that diploma recognition requires the fact of the diploma recognition of university diplomas awarded by foreign higher education institutions as equivalent to a degree in Spain. It's the fact, the same that Lance had already presented on one of the issues. And in this case, the competent authority is the Education Ministry. That is the definition basically that is addressed on the diploma recognition. Okay, there's also the part of the information. I wouldn't get any further, but you know, this is a bit brings a bit of a burden on the fact that there's going to be comparison regarding syllabuses, etc. But I'll follow on that. And last but not least, I would like to talk on regarding professional liability. It's not on the fact that we may be more liable or less liable than any other country in the world. That's not the point. But it is quite important in order to be able to aware that professional licensing is different in any of the countries. And especially this professional liability, this example that I'm bringing you, is also applicable to most of the Spanish-speaking countries on the grounds of the heritage that was brought up regarding law. So in order to get some further insight, I think we're all aware of what is liability and what would be the causes. And also the fact that there's different types of liability regarding the contract, or elements that are contract specific, or there are liabilities which are off contract, regarding with the client or not with the client. As we're aware, there's some causes that may be negligence, malpractice, and any other causes. Bringing to that, there's some liability drivers that must be aware, and they are sure to be done in most of the codes of ethics, which are the fact of knowledge misapplication on the facts like miscalculations, risk accreditation to stakeholders on the grounds that the fact is quite easy to, and that is a basis for malpractice in any type of service, not rather the path of engineering or not. Careless professional practice, the fact the mismanagement of health and safety measures, and the abuse of trust, which is not acceptable, I think, in no other profession. In these grounds, that is the basic difference to be addressed here, and that is the reason basically to be presented on the fact of liability, is the fact that there are two compensation mechanisms available to clients regarding suing procedures in Spain. One is regarding the common law, which would be quite acceptable and quite similar to the addressing of compensation mechanisms regarding civil engineering malpractice in Texas. But the other one is regarding the fact of criminal law. We also do have our ethics discipline, etc. But the grounds is that also court can revoke licenses on the grounds of malpractice. And in this case, the fact is that the punishment of antisocial behavior and not all that on the fact of manslaughter and some other issues may also derive on the fact of jail conviction. And in the case of conviction, it's possible that it would also bring up a guilty ruling regarding damage compensation, as it has been already demonstrated that there was a malpractice or an inadequate behavior by the professional. In order to be able to bring some further information or some further insight regarding these compensation mechanisms and the fact of liability, which is quite crucial in the case of any professional which is finally going to practice in Spain, let me bring you two different publications that have been addressed on the grounds. And one of them is one of the professional notebooks here, which is an outreach publication which is called La Responsabilidad Profesional en Ingeniería Civil, regarding professional liability for ICCP, and also another one, which is also is the fact of los seguros de responsabilidad profesional, professional liability insurance for ICCP. The reason why these publications were presented is the fact that Colegio itself also has coverage, offers coverage for the professionals regarding some basic insurance to be addressed. So, last but not least, I would like to thank you for the time that you've lent me, and I will be open to any questions.
This is Lance. Thank you very much, Jose. It was a wonderful presentation. I do see there's one question in the box asking about if there's any other colegios, mechanical, electrical, or others that are with similar licensure requirements that are looking to work with Texas. So I'm not aware of any. You guys are the first ones from Spain that have contacted us. Are you aware of any other groups that are considering this?
I mean, I can tell you one thing. I mean, it's for sure. I mean, what we must be aware of the issue is the fact that normally, in the case of Spain, civil engineering professionals are the more breakthrough regarding all the activities of bilateral agreements. I mean, we were open since 1985 to work with several mutual exemption agreements with the UK, and one of the issues that is discussed is that we are far more activated on this issue than some others. But I'm sure that if we were able to bring some playing field, I think they would add themselves on the minute. In order to bring some further information, Lance, sorry, is the fact that here in Spain we will have 9 different civil engineering branches, and also we must be aware also of the fact of the 2-tier elements regarding the what we say the ingeniero or the ingeniero técnico, the engineer or the engineering technician. I don't know if that's okay for the question.
I believe that kind of covers it a little bit. I'm trying to see, there's another question here.
Let's see. Accreditation of the degree.
So I believe it's a person that has a degree in Spain and is looking to have it reviewed. Is that correct?
It was reviewed by NCAAS, but they found that they were deficient in some hours. And the question is whether they should have it re-reviewed by another company. All of our review companies pretty much use the same standards. So the NCAAS answer may be different than another company, but you may get the same answer as well. It says that according to NCAAS, the degree was deficient in 6 semester credit hours of general education, and our rules don't allow us to waive any part of that requirement. So if you were deemed deficient, if the degree was deemed deficient in 6 hours, you would have to get those 6 hours before we could accept it as ABET equivalent. That doesn't mean that we couldn't consider it to be equivalent to a non-ABET degree, though. Our rules in Texas allow us to consider a degree that's evaluated as deficient in some ways may qualify as a non-ABET degree. So if you had other experience and you were able to meet the 8-year requirement instead of the 4, then you could be fine with what you have. So there's a couple of options there.
And this is Lance again, to add on to that, it would be case by case in some situations. So if you do have those issues, you can contact us directly and we'll be able to help a little bit with that.
Lance, if I may, in order to be able to add some issues regarding one of the main problems we're having for Spanish professionals is that one of the most important is regarding the formalities and the final documentation to be provided on the fact of the syllabus. I think that one of the issues we're trying to discuss, and that is one of the reasons we will finally make, there's a need to be able to have a better knowledge and understanding regarding degrees and the structures, is in order to make that easier. I mean, to make it easier and to have the information and to finally be able to understand how is addressable and how we can because there's also some rulings which are favorable with full ABET credit with full NCAAS assessment, and it's basically one of the problems of the case by case to be able to understand what was the information that was submitted, and somehow how the document the documentation was presented for the final ruling. So that thing is something which we will try to somehow work from the collaboration with Colegio and the Texas board in order to be able to not have any deficient formalities that will make rulings negative rulings because of lack of documentation.
Yes, and to add on to that's a very excellent point. Right now, the presentations today are based on the current requirements as they stand. And so as we move forward, we'll see if there's any ways to align things and work on a better process as we go. But this is step number one, sharing with everybody what happens now in Spain and what happens now in Texas. So keep in tune and follow along with us, and we'll try and continue to communicate with everybody as our discussions move forward over the next year. So if there's any other questions, please type them into the box. We still have a couple minutes here, but I'm not going to keep you on if there's nothing more to discuss at this point. So
I want to know where to start with Texas.
The person mentioned I'm in Texas. Where do I go online to begin? Engineers.texas.gov. The link we posted earlier. Everything's right there, and I believe on the right-hand side there's a link that's a button that just says I want to start my application. So. Oh, Texas PE, where do I go online to begin? Oh, I see. Excuse me. You're a Texas PE and you want to get licensed in Spain, my guess is the question. So, Jose, what would you do? If a person is licensed in Texas right now and they want to get licensed there, what would they do right now?
I mean, basically, the first thing in order to be able to somehow assess him on the best situation, I would send an email to my address in order to be able which is the branch, and in that case how is to be addressed, and somehow we will be able to somehow compile all the information that will be required on the facts for the syllabus. And I think that one of the best things to be done here is we offer ourselves in order to help them in the walkthrough of the procedure. So I mean we're open to that.
There's another question on the box about if you can get a Texas PE if you don't have a visa or green card. Texas license is actually a U.S. federal license that requires that you have the legal right to work in the U.S. before you or when you apply. So if you don't have that legal right to work, then you can't apply for a license in Texas.
There's another question here about if Spain is considered becoming a signatory to the Washington Accord. I'm not sure if that's something Jose can answer, but maybe you can address.
Well, I mean, basically, I'm no member of the Ministry of Education. I've already had information regarding the agency. I mean, for the time being, regarding the fact of substantial equivalence, the idea here is that there's, and that is my own perception. I mean, the fact is that in any case, if that would have to be addressed, there would have to be an enormous effort to be addressed by the ministry itself and all the branches of engineering, on the grounds that to be able to qualify for some degrees regarding the Washington Accord would bring us a huge effort, which in the end, regarding professional mobility, on a case-by-case basis or during degree assessments, it would be easily to be overcome. I mean, in the case of the EU and some other discussions, I mean, on the time being, there are now several discussions regarding FEANI EU accredited degrees in order to be able to have equivalence with ABET, which in the end which render ineffective the fact of being a member for the Washington Accord itself. And somehow, in the case of Spain, with some other countries which have had such equivalence, there has been quite positive remarks, for example, on the grounds that after several negotiations, 5 of the 13 degrees which are now providing the access to the related profession of ingeniero de caminos, canales y puertos have already been classified in order to be able to work, for example, in Singapore. I mean, we're working basically on a case-by-case basis because we don't expect the interest of the government in the future, in the short time, to be able to address neither Washington Accord nor the Sydney Accords.
Okay, good question. We have just a minute or two left, so if there's any other questions, please type them in the box. But without any others, I do want to say thank you all very much for attending today. Hopefully you found it informative as a first step regarding licensure in both of our countries and in Texas here. And we'll keep you informed as we move forward, but I want to thank you all very much from here. And Jose, any closing words?
No, thank you to everybody. I expect I didn't bore you too much. Muchas gracias a todos y espero no haberos aburrido mucho. Because this issue, I think that in your case also, Lance, we already are aware of what are the difficulties, and it is in interest for all of our audience to be able to overcome them. Because in the end, there are no engineers. There are no civil engineers for all the needs that the world now is requiring. So we should have to work hard on that.
Well, thank you all very much. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And so we'll talk to you soon. Thank you and have a good day.
Lance, do you hear me?
Everybody will go here. Oh.
Hello, Lance?
Yes, we're trying to turn off the webinar.
Sorry. Okay.
I don't know how to actually switch. You want to just turn it off?
Yeah, I mean, exit make a file and exit the webinar. Shall we talk later? Possible.
Yes, we can talk later. That would be great. Maybe we can talk tomorrow?
No problem with that.
That way you can go home for the day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.